Good day, Sean here again, and still working on those hay nets. This is one thing I do I find it works better to have multiple topics when I do have a chance to shoot video and shoot multiples. Might be obvious when I do that, it might be not so obvious. Right now, of course, pretty obvious because when you got hay nets around here, it's like, those look exactly the same as the previous video. So, gardening plans. Something that is an absolute passion of mine. And really like to encourage people to garden. I think it is spiritually very beneficial. It's also beneficial to the environment if you do it right. Because the less it's having to be grown on a commercial factory farm and then loaded on a truck, burning diesel almost always to get it someplace. And there's a lot of pollution involved in getting the produce and meats and everything on the grocery shelf. And regardless of whether it says organic or not, at least here in the U.S., organic really just means different chemicals, not no chemicals. So it's the label's not so healthy, shall we say, and environmentally friendly as it's people try to portray it at. And I'm speaking for here in the U.S. If you really want to have good stuff, grow it yourself. Because you can grow tomato varieties that you will not find in the store, because what goes in the store needs to be picked green usually, and needs to be something that is tough enough that it can be commercially handled. That's true with a whole lot of vegetables. Then one of the keys is, will it survive the whole process of getting it to your grocery store? And there are shortcuts when it comes to nutritional value and flavor and all that are taken to make it easier to get it there. Give me one moment here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Okay. 7 and 7 on hay nets. 3.5 days for each horse. So, yeah, gardening. Just about everyone can garden to some extent. It might be just a potato plant on your table or on the windowsill. If you're in an apartment and you have a patio, something out on the patio. If you're lucky as me, I have about 3.5 acres here, then you can go beyond gardening actually into a more hobby farm, is more accurate. And just things to consider of starting your plants indoors rather than buying plants already started. It's going to save you a tremendous amount of money. It will also open up varieties that you're not going to otherwise see. If you choose heirloom seeds, though, rather than hybrids, then you can do seed saving and you will get the same thing that you planted, same variety. Where if you plant hybrids, you can get all kinds of stuff. An example of that is I planted a squash called I want to say, I think it was white ace, maybe. Collected seeds from it. It was a so-so squash. Planted the seeds. I got a huge variety of squash out of that. So it very obviously it was a hybrid, and it really showed that, and that those seeds did not grow that same plant. And overall, I didn't like what it grew to start with. Didn't like what it grew off from the seeds. So if you choose the right one, you can even grow some good squash. I mean, summer squash especially, there's varieties that are much more of a bush than a trailing vine, require limited space. There's some winter squash, same way. My favorite winter squash is called the Sweet Meat Winter Keeper, and that's the one I grow. Here I also grow some zucchini, still settling in on which variety there, trying a few summer squashes, and tomatoes. You'll see, and my herbs, I'm working on expanding the herbs. Frankly, if you have fresh sage, garden sage, and you use that instead of what you buy at the store, you will think they are two different spices. It is such an incredible difference in flavor. And my mint did pretty good last year. I was starting a new deal. I was having trouble getting it to grow where I originally tried, so I tried container on that. And one thing on containers, you can adjust soil a lot better. The soils I have here are derived from volcanic rock basalt, and they're not actually that good. So the ones that really do decent have a whole lot of cured horse manure. I can't call it composted because I don't do certain tests on it, but essentially it is. And it's from my horses, so I know the history on it. And I've bought from the same hay grower for a few decades, so I know how he farms. And it gives you a lot of control on it that if you're buying in the grocery store, you don't have. If you want to expand your growing season, if you have even a little bit of space, there are some fairly inexpensive small greenhouses, and they can do a lot. And you can even use small heaters, thing like charcoal, briquette heater type deals. If you are having nights that are a little chilly, and you can buy those, or if you have horses like I do, you can actually make those things from their cured manure and do it right, and they burn pretty good from what I've read. I'm actually planning on trying that this coming summer. So, thoughts on gardening there. One thing to realize with gardening, and it took me a while to realize this, you can get all those tables that say, well, you don't plant this next to this. And okay, if you're planting stuff so where it's intermixed, such as planting something that grows low and something that grows tall, yeah, you do need to watch that. The concept is called allelopathy for a long time. Some controversy on that, at least in the past, for whether it really existed. at least the concept. But really what I have seen, you can plant just about anything next to anything, and so long as you don't have a cross-pollination concern, which if you're growing heirloom, let's say you have 2 heirloom winter squash varieties, you would not want to plant them side by side. You'd want a good separation between them, because otherwise you're no longer going to have a heirloom line, you're going to have a hybrid. And you can just wipe out your whole seed line very easily doing that. But so long as you're doing something such as planting a winter squash next to a summer squash next to a cucumber, you're not going to have cross-pollination there. Next to tomatoes, and carrots, some onions. Don't get hung up on the idea of, oh, you can't have these things side by side. A whole lot of that it's myth, urban legend, not actually true. Because what really will make a difference is spacing on your plants. You might think, well, I've got this limited space, so I'm going to really pack everything in tight to maximize my production. It's actually a good way to minimize or even totally destroy your production. These plants need space. And you can get more production from, say, one zucchini plant that has the proper amount of space versus if you packed 4 of them into that same square. You won't see the production off from the 4 because the plant's crowded. And here's an interesting deal. If you have a lawn in the U.S., lawns typically in the U.S. at least are bluegrass. Bluegrass reproduces one of 2 ways, asexually and sexually. Asexually is by runner, sexually is by seed production. How often do you see a lawn with stalks growing up in seeds? You don't, though you can make them do it. All you have to do is go through and leave a 4 to 6 inch strip of grass and have 4 to 6 inches of bare soil on either side of it. And because it has the bare soil space, you will see production of stalks. But if it is packed in, it doesn't produce seeds. It's evolved to propagate one of 2 ways. And if it's tight and compressed, it's not going to waste energy on seeds that can't get to the bare ground to grow anyway. Plants that did that were not successful and removed themselves from the gene pool. In very broad terms, your garden is the same way. You want it to produce, for most stuff, you want it to produce sexually. That is to generate flowers, have those pollinated, and produce a fruit in broad terms. We often call them vegetables, but there's a whole variety in there. But call it a fruit or a vegetable, it still is a ripened ovary. And if you pack them in too tight, you're not going to get that flower production, which means you're not going to get those ripened ovaries. So it can be very, very tempting to pack stuff in, but don't do it. And don't get hung up on, oh, I can't plant this next to this. As I said, unless you have a cross-pollination issue concern, odds are it's not actually going to make a difference. So get out there and garden. It is definitely not too soon by any means to be planting those gardens. And if you're going to be growing indoors, you can grow year-round. Might need a grow light in the wintertime with those short days. You want to make sure they don't get close to cold windows, because that can cause problems. Keep them warm. Having a tray with a grow light that's over a heater vent, you can keep them nice and warm and wanting to produce like crazy. And certainly the majority of your herbs used in cooking and in a variety of magical practices grow indoors wonderfully. So we'll call that a wrap on the gardening, because I do need to go change a hose. I can have a little spot I can look out right through there and look at the tub that's being filled. And we were just about to spill over. So, signing out. A wonderful day, and may your gardens bless you with joy.